If you have a fear of public speaking, a fear of failure, a fear of rejection, maybe even a fear of success, maybe it's a fear of snakes, spiders, sharks, and all the other creepy crawlies on the planet, guess what? You are not alone. You are a part of the entire human race. But if you are a high performer, it is not acceptable to stay stuck in your fear. And in this video, I'm going to give you 4 things that you can implement right here, right now, today to help you start working with fear and using it as a performance-enhancing drug. What's up, my friends? JT DeBolt with you today for the weekly momentum shift. Your weekly kick in the ass to help you elevate your performance to accomplish your missions in business and in life. Fear. It's a natural part of the human experience. We all have it because as members of the animal kingdom, we actually have it ingrained in us as a survival technique. Way back in the day when we were living in caves and hunting saber-toothed tigers and running from saber-toothed tigers, we needed that fear to keep us on edge, to keep us on our game. Nowadays, we have fewer threats, and most of those threats that we actually have are perceived threats, which is the interesting part about fear in the first place. Fear is not real. Fear is not reality. Case in point, skydiving. Now, just me saying that causes some of you to freak out. The idea of jumping out of a perfectly good airplane is absolute bliss and excitement and enjoyment. In fact, in some cases, stress relief for one person, and then it is the biggest catalyst for fear and the biggest catalyst for stress for another. So how is it that one experience can be felt differently by 2 different types of people? It goes to show you just how much fear is actually not reality. It's all in the perception of the person, which is great news. That tells us we can actually work with it. That tells us we can actually leverage it. So whether it is a fear of public speaking or a fear of rejection, you've got to learn to work with this, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because let's be honest, the chips are, you're all in on this one. And everybody's looking to you for the solutions. Everybody wants you to deliver. Everybody wants you to step up. And so fear holding you back is non-negotiable. But we can use fear to actually serve as a catalyst to up our game, to give us better performance and help us take that next step at an even better level of performance. So let's talk about how to do that. Step 1, we have to face our fear. So what I want you to do is to get out a piece of paper and write down whatever fears are currently holding you back in your business, your career. If you're leading a team, what fears do you have that show up, keep you up at night? You know the fears I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, I've got a fear of spiders and that's keeping me from launching my business, or I've got a fear of snakes and that's keeping me from writing my book. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the real fear that steps up, talks, barks in your face, wraps its icy fingers around your throat and tells you you can't do this. What I want you to do is write that fear down and, more importantly, talk about what it means to you. It's one thing to say, hey, I have a fear of something. It's another thing to get really clear and kind of journal out what specifically that fear means to you, what it represents to you. I don't want you to just blindly say, I've got a fear of rejection and therefore I don't take action in my business. Bullshit. Go deeper on that. Give yourself the courtesy and the time to actually get really deep and clear on what that fear is, what it represents to you, and more importantly, what that actual fear is. Not just fear of rejection from what? Fear of rejection from whom? Fear of rejection that leads to what in your business? Dive deep. Step 2 is to evaluate your fear. Now, this is key and essential. When we talk about evaluation, we're not talking about judgment. We're not talking about being critical. We are talking about, though, thinking critically. Critical thinking skills are lacking these days all across the board in society. But it's so important if we're going to get better at something, especially dealing with our fear, we have to be able to think critically. And so here's how you think critically when it comes to evaluation. You want to ask 3 questions when it comes to evaluating your fear. Question number 1 is, what about your fear works for you? What about that fear has value to it? It might be just the simple fact of you're aware that you have the fear, that it's actually there, as opposed to, I can't figure out how come I can't get myself to do this thing. If you understand that you actually have a fear and you're willing to accept it, embrace it, and even talk about it, that's a good thing. Another thing that might work for you with your fear is to be able to say, hey, listen, that fear is there, and I realize that when I do work against it, when I actually show up and tell the fear to go fuck itself, I actually perform at a higher level. That could be another thing that's very valuable for you. So talk about the things about your fear that work. The second question when it comes to evaluation is, what about this fear does not help me? What about this fear does not work for me? And of course, it's going to be obvious. Most of the time it comes down to not taking action. A lot of times we talk about procrastination. I'll be doing a future video on that, so stay tuned with how to get past procrastination. But the most important thing for you right here, right now, today with fear is to take a look at what about your fear has been costing you in your business and your career. What has it been costing you and where? And then the third question when it comes to evaluation is, what about that might you do differently? This gives us a window into the future and into the present, because we're talking about action. We're talking about what we can actually do to leverage our fear to make ourselves better and to up our performance. So that's the first two steps: face it and evaluate it. Now let's talk about the third step of dealing with fear, and that is to act on the fear. We're actually going to take action on it in the moment. It could be a small thing, it could be a large thing. If you have a fear of rejection, it might be important to write down all of the sales calls that you're going to make today, tomorrow, next week, whatever it is. But as long as you're in action where you're like, I'm addressing this thing that I'm afraid of, you write down all the names and numbers of the people you're going to call, make a plan for when you're going to call them. But the biggest lever you can pull when it comes to fear, and especially this third step of acting on fear, is time is of the essence. Right here, right now. Do not give in to the tyranny of fear. Do not give in to the tyranny of procrastination. Do the thing that scares you right here, right now, today. The faster you act on it, the more immediate you jump into action, the more leverage you will actually have against the fear. The fourth step in acting with fear is to remember. Remember what got you started on this path. Remember what got you started on this journey of entrepreneurship, or this business that you're building, or this career path that means so much. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the accomplishment and the accolades and all that kind of stuff. That's important. But if you're stopped and you're gripped by fear, then you need to get back to the root of what really drove you. What drives you to succeed? What drives you to want this thing? What drives you to want to be your best? When you get really clear on those things and be able to chop down into small bite-sized pieces what really is important to you about your mission, that's where fear starts to lose its grip. Because at the end of the day, remembering the things that matter elevate that sense of love. And love creates a no-fly zone for fear 24/7, 365, every single time. Face it, evaluate it, act on it, and remember what got you started in the first place. That is how you conquer your fear. If you got some value from this, throw a comment down in the comment section. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this, especially for you true drivens out there that are doing the big important work in your business and your life. And stay tuned for another episode of the Weekly Momentum Shift coming at you soon. And remember, no matter what course you fly in life, fly high, fly fast, fly far, stay driven.